Hello, everyone. This is lesson number 55, and it's kind of a controversial, bold one. It's enemies. If you don't remember, I've just taken everything and put it in alphabetical order, so there's no 55, just happens to be the 55th lesson that I wrote in this book called God Total, and E for enemies was happened to fall on 55. So, anyway, in modern times, we don't really talk about enemies. In the old days, if you were a Dringer, your enemies were important. Whether it was Achilles or whoever, they talked about their enemies. Now we don't. It's kind of a lost topic. But and you're not supposed to have enemies. You're supposed to love your enemies. You're supposed to forgive your enemies. You're supposed to be bigger than your enemies and all of that stuff. But that doesn't really change reality. If you are in competition with somebody, you might not be their enemy. You might be in a fair battle, say a wrestling match or something. If somebody beats you and they beat you fair and square, you're almost never mad about that. If somebody, I've seen two people wrestle and one wins, and yeah, he was just bigger or not bigger because in wrestling they have the same weight, but he's better, he's more skilled, he's stronger, he's better endurance, he's better condition, whatever. And the loser is never really that mad unless the winner cheated. If he took advantage of something, or if one baseball team plays against another one and they're just a better team, the losing team is not really angry at the winning team. Same with football or anything else. It's only when someone takes advantage of you by cheating, by nefarious means, that you have that anger. So this is something we need to understand about enemies. Your enemy, it could be someone at work who spreads rumors about you to damage you, or plants, somebody planted drugs in your desk or something like that. That is an enemy, and so you want to be careful about that. And I'm big about clarifying your terms. So someone you're in competition with isn't necessarily your enemy. In fact, you might respect them a lot. Someone who you're in a contest with may not be, but someone who is out to damage you beyond the rules of the game, whatever that happens to be, that is your enemy. You want to be careful, because if you have an enemy, it's you give that person a lot of power over you. And this is where some people have the misguided idea, oh, forgive your enemies. Well, that's really just forgiving yourself. If someone mugs you in the alley and they beat you up and they take your wallet and they kick you and break your jaw and stomp on your head while you're down, okay, you've lost. If you forgive them, how does that do you good? Well, it might do you good because no one forgives their enemies. That's kind of a misnomer. You have to forgive yourself. You have to forgive yourself for being weak enough to get beat up, for putting dumb enough to go walk down that dark alley, um, those type of things. So all of this is, and there's a lot of misinformation or a lot of confused points of that. So no one forgives an enemy. They just have to forgive themselves. Someone might take self-defense, lift weights, buy a gun, whatever they have to be. And so that doesn't happen to them anymore. And then they can forgive themselves for being stupid, weak, vulnerable. And they decided, I'm not going to be stupid, weak, and vulnerable anymore. And then they let it go and move on. They've taken the lesson from life and they've made it a guidepost, not a hitching post. And they don't keep reliving that. Someone might go a step farther and they may take self-defense, learn how to fight, go find that guy, hunt him down and beat him up and smash him. And what they've done then is they've never really taken that loss. They've gone by and fixed it. They've made that fight last a year. Those are some psychological things that people need to understand about themselves. It's important because in today's modern society, you can't go fight your enemies. We have so many layers of laws, and it's not illegal to lie to someone. You can make a contract and lie to them, but if it's written in a certain way, you can trap them. A boss can do something to you, and you can never get back at them. A coworker can. Your neighbor, you can't. Nobody can go out and punch their neighbor in the mouth if they're horrible. I knew one guy. His neighbor shined lights in the backyard just to keep him up all night, and had dogs. you know, and they called the police, and the police said, well, you can have to get dark curtains. So they just did that to mess with them, and then the neighbors did it. There was really no recourse, so you just have to minimize the damage. So these are some examples of what you have to do, and be careful with your enemies. Don't give someone, before you elevate someone to the status of your enemy, make sure they're worthy of it, and make sure they're really a threat, a real enemy. A lot of people don't know who their enemy is, and they give someone a lot of energy um, before that. I've said sometimes, a dog will defend a master that beats him because he thinks the stranger's his enemy, and he might not be. Um, a woman may defend the man that is a bad boyfriend that's setting her up as a drug mule because she doesn't know who her real enemy is. So look at someone that gives you a lot of trouble, and look at the situation and analyze it like a scientist, and see if that person is really an enemy and what can be done about it. Okay? Um, so, and this is important because even we subconsciously know that we're responsible for everything in our life. So if you were so weak and so vulnerable and put yourself in such a bad situation that someone could hurt you because you've made the enemy stronger, you need to forgive yourself and move on. That's not forgiving your enemy. All right? Let me see what I wrote up here. First thing you have to do is know who your enemy is. Identify them and their intentions, and understand that. There's a lot of people that creep up on someone trying to harm them, but it's almost never a surprise attack if you have your eyes open. Okay? Secondly, know your enemy's strengths and weaknesses, where he can hurt you, where he can't hurt you. And understand the motivation of your enemy. That's important too for kind of getting along in there. And then weigh your power against your enemy's power. I'm always surprised how many people allow a person to hurt them who's weaker than them, really not in a position to hurt them at all. I've seen women who were hurt by what another woman said, and that person shouldn't carry any weight have no power over them. So don't give your enemies more power than they really have. Okay? And if you're more powerful than your enemy, don't make them a choice to hurt you and affect you in any way. So this is I probably haven't said this in the clearest way, but this is important. If someone is harming you, I've said to people before, is that your enemy? And they'll say he's my nemesis, or she's my nemesis. And like, really, you're giving them that much power? They're a nemesis and they're not even that powerful? Look when someone's trying to harm you, and see if you just calling someone an enemy tends to make you analyze that person in that situation better than it otherwise would have. I know a lot of people that have kept their eyes closed in a bad relationship, a bad job, a bad social situation, and they let someone hurt them way more than they needed to. And if they'd early on said, this is an enemy, they would have went, oh, and they would have listed up a whole bunch of stuff. I don't know if that's because we have a kiddie comic book mindset where your arch enemy is a little more serious, but take that seriously, look at it, and on the other hand, don't take it so seriously that you give your life to, because remember, you don't want your enemies to have all that power over you. The old saying, never do your enemy a minor injury. You should crush your enemies and make sure they don't have any power over you, and you should eliminate them from life. And that usually means avoiding them. Don't be around toxic people. Cut the cancer out, get away from them, and minimize the damage they can do to you. Many people, the old saying, hurt people hurt people, or as the great Nietzsche said, they who cannot bless will learn to curse. There's a lot of people that never feel more powerful and more alive than if they're inflicting damage on other people. That's a sign of a real sick, weak person. And there's a lot of those people in the world, in our environment today. And unfortunately, it's not a fatal flaw anymore. So you just avoid those people. Get away from them, and don't be slow to label someone an enemy. Analyze that person, and then say, okay, I will isolate them just like you'd isolate an infection, or you'd isolate a toxic thing. Isolate it, compartmentalize it, get rid of it, and then move on with your life. All right? Hope this helps somebody. If you have any questions, write them in the comments. Thank you very much.